Having fled Lyria, Queen Maeve ventured into Edirn, her old friend Reynard and new ally Gascon at her side. The war had bitten into this land too. Still, Maeve hoped to sway King Demavend to her cause, and with his aid, to oust the traitors, retake her throne, and drive the Nilfgaardian invader from her realm. Yet to start, she was forced to fight, Scoia'tael no less. Emerging from a wood, Maeve's retinue encountered a unit of elven rebels just moments from hanging a handful of prisoners. Among the latter, the Queen spotted a woman, a proud warrior with a striking, thick black braid.
The lass I believe I know.
Well, unless we rush to her rescue, it'll soon be you knew her.
Well said. Libyans, attack!
Hang the butcher! Below her!
She can't breathe, Your Grace. We must rush to her aid.
Nay, Dwan they camest.
Bigger they are, easier they are to target.
Dol! Blathana!
Free the warrior!
Yeah, yeah!
I shall not fail!
The elves! Scatter them! They block our path!
None shall tread on us!
Thing about slings, they hide well.
The Scoia'tael warriors shocked the Queen with their speed, their cunning, and their cruelty. Yet in the end, the Libyans prevailed. When the last elf hit the ground, the Queen had her men untie those they'd sought to hang.
1,000 thanks, Your Grace. Heard many tales of your valor. Pleased to see there weren't just flattery and propaganda.
Black Rayla. Haga, we saw you there. You command King Demavend's special forces.
That's right. Though not many remain to command. So I see. How did it come to this?
My liege sent me to wipe out a Scoia'tael band, led by a rat called Eldane. Followed the vermin's tracks for several days. Straight into his trap, turned out.
Hunting elves in the woods. Truly inspired, I must say.
Had no choice. Doing nothing would have brought us sure a swifter doom. The Black-Clad have invaded Edirn. Thanks to elven aid. They snap our supply lines, lurk like dogs, prey on vulnerable units and scouts.
You mean to say Nilfgaard's broken your defenses?
Aye. Though their march will soon halt, believe me. To advance, they'll have to take Rosberg, a stronghold that's yet to fall once. They'll break against its walls like waves upon the rocks.
While Edirn stands, the north is not yet lost.
I'll convey your grace's words to the king at the first occasion.
I'd rather hope to convey them myself. I have come to Edirn seeking aid. I wish to ask Demavend for support.
The king is in Rosberg, overseeing siege preparations. I'm heading that way too to report on our skirmish with the Scoia'tael. I might serve as your guide. These lands I know better than any.
Excellent. Guide on. How fare you, Rayla? The quartermaster, did he assign you a tent?
He tried.
Oh, and?
I refused it. Best to sleep beneath the stars, little chance of a foe catching you off guard.
Rain accepted, perhaps?
I'm not made of sugar, ma'am. I'm not gonna melt.
One sees very few women in the ranks, let alone in the special forces. How did you come to join?
On merit. Proved I'd be of use.
Yes, well, naturally. But how exactly?
I was 15 when I went to enlist. But the sergeant in charge of signing folk up told me to scurry on home. So I proposed a wager. Arm wrestling. If I won, he'd let me join. If I lost, I'd pay him 100 crowns.
And that kind of coin? You had it?
No. So I had to win. As we sat down at the table, across from each other, he laughed and rolled up his sleeve. When it was over, all around us were laughing at him. Then I just followed orders. Did so well enough to draw the king's attention.
I must go. We'll speak later.
Your Grace, how fortunate you're here. Behold what wickedness is afoot.
I'm trying to behold Sir Ake, yet I cannot be sure what.
Reynard and Gascon, my lady. Caught in the act of playing face cards.
Oh, that. Indeed they are. Good.
Good? Games of chance, good. Why, they are evil's very claws. Corrupting, tearing at the soul, seeping venom into the heart.
I wouldn't worry about Reynard's heart, Sir Ake. As for Gascon's, too late already, I fear. Besides, they're getting along, that's what matters. If cards do the trick, so be it. Does the good book contain an answer to every question?
Each and every query, without exception.
What does it prescribe a mother betrayed by her son? Tender forgiveness or unflinching firmness?
A moment while I ponder. There's a verse in chapter 2. A child who doth with waywardness defy his mother and father deserveth discipline most severe. Strike him thus heartily, unless thine heart stilleth thy hand.
But one could interpret that any way one wishes.
To thine own self be judge and ruler, spoke the prophet Lebioda. For thou alone shalt answer for thine deeds before thee.
There's a certain wisdom to those words.
Yes, your majesty. One need but gaze deeply into the verses, and oneself.
Your crusade against monsters. Have you been at it long?
Come next Bellatane, it will be 20 years, your grace. Though, there was one extended interruption.
For what reason? Had you grown weary of the knight-errant's life?
Not in the least. Never shall I cease in my quest to cleanse the world of filth and abominations. But at times evil puts up rather a good fight. I ventured forth to slay a dragon once. A gold one, as it were. Calling itself Villa Tretormeft, or the like. Its very name, as is evident, a vile toil for the tongue and wafting wickedness. A great many mercenaries embarked on the hunt, lured by the promise of coin in heaps. The Crinford Reavers, Yarpen Zigrin, and a band of dwarves. Even, curse the word, a witcher. One Yennefer, the most lecherous sorceress, at his side.
That name I've heard.
But at the deciding moment, when the beast challenged all, I alone emerged to face it. Alas, though shame burns me to admit it, I returned from the battle upon my shield. Figuratively. Literally. I returned in pieces. For 2 years, I lay in the temple of Melitele in Alanda. Mother Neneke, God's protector, nursing me back to full health. And only when I could once more grip my sword did I return to the path I'd chosen.
And the dragon? What was its fate?
Some claim it flew off to Zerrikania, though it very well might yet lurk here, awaiting the opportune moment to terrorize the folk of the north again.
Farewell, Ake.
Yes, Your Grace?
I cannot forgive myself one thing. That I failed to see through Caldwell's schemes. He must have plotted treason for months, years even. Yet I suspected nothing.
Don't be too hard on yourself, Your Grace.
Easily said. Ugh, if I'd only realized it in time.
Nilfgaard would have found a different traitor, or sent an assassin north. It was unavoidable what happened. The Black-Clads would have attacked in any case, and we'd have stood no chance to defeat the foe in open battle, repel him, drive him out.
So, had you been there when the peers assembled, you also would have voted to bend the knee?
No. My honor would never have allowed it. I'd have thrown myself into the fire, and probably died a fool for it. As matters stand, I still have a chance to thwart the invader, his intentions. It seems, in a twisted turn of fate, I should be grateful to Caldwell.
How has it come to this? I, Queen Meave of Lyria and Rivia, must prowl about the underbrush like a common bandit. And you, General Reynard Odo, once proud commander of 4 elite regiments of footmen, now lead a gang of deserters, bandits and scythe-wielding peasants.
I do so proudly, Your Grace.
You must be joking, Reynard.
Your Majesty, under your husband I served 10 years, under you another 8. And never in that time did I fight for a more worthy cause. We seek not to grab land, or stifle a peasant revolt. We fight for all the North, for our freedom, that of others, and you alone didn't give up. Didn't even consider bending the knee before Nilfgaard.
Yes, all true. Yet look where it's brought me.
Your struggle has but begun, Your Grace, and I will do all in my power to see you triumph in the end.
It's time I attended to other matters. So, Gascon, the soldier's life, does it suit you?
About the same as the bandit's life did.
I beg your pardon?
The tents are cold, the food's shite. On the plus side, plenty to drink, most days. A skirmish here, a scuffle there. Nilfgaardians one day, elves the next, and whoever we rout, we rob of what they've got.
Requisition, you mean? Fully in accordance with the laws of war.
Oh, please. Save your excuses for your father confessor.
I can't stop wondering. How did your strays break into the tower in Lyria?
They exploited its chief weakness.
What weakness is that? I oversaw its construction myself. Walls 5 feet thick, bars and grates of the sturdiest iron.
All tremendous, I'm sure. But how much do you pay the guards?
What? I don't know. The garrison's commander is in charge of that.
Let me tell you then. Not much, Meave. Not much at all. From atop a throne, it's hard to spot the little things. Example, a guard hard up for coin, or one with ambitions. But seeing that's second nature to even the most ordinary bandit. Take any castle door. To open it, to open all, one needs but a pouch of gold.
The Duke of Dogs. Whence the name?
Not certain I should tell you. It's a personal story somewhat.
I insist.
So, thing is, I'm a werewolf of sorts.
Did I hear werewolf?
Of sorts. You see, when the full moon glows in the night sky, I transform into a creature that's half man, half dachshund. And then all the other hounds of the night hearken to my command.
Oh, forget I asked.
With pleasure.
It's time I attended to other matters. Farewell. Gods. The entire country up in flames.
Ebtar warned punishment awaited Edirn, that he would show the land no mercy.
What in God's names did you do to him, Rayla?
Nilfgaard offered us an alliance against the rest of the north. but Deafening declined in his clipped soldier's speech. They say Abdahi flew into a rage and swore he'd reduce Edern to rubble.
Any of you see me, Moy? Was bound here from Iconfar. Supposed to have arrived 3 days past.
The Libyans arrived at an ancient, half-desiccated beach. Its trunk sat atop a tangle of thick roots, and scraps of paper covered with tiny scribblings fluttered over it from top to bottom. Travelers crowded all around. Barefoot refugees, bony pilgrims, peddlers with armored escorts, and shifty-eyed men with the haggard look of deserters.
The Wayfarer's Beach.
Rayla said.
Travellers of all sorts swap tales here. Perhaps we can glean something about our enemy's movements.
Or paint the enemy a clear picture of our own.
Gascon interrupted.
Nilfgaardian spies no doubt flock to this tree like flies to particularly pungent dung.
Disregarding matters of status and station, Meave personally asked the travellers for the latest news. They soon transformed from terse to talkative, sharing tales of an elven bandit named Eldain, a Nilfgaardian general called Frigga who murdered an entire village, and a sorceress who cure any ailment for a few coppers. Then a blood-curdling scream put a halt to the gossip. Meave's soldiers had begun to quarrel with the merchant's guards, one of whom now lay dead on the ground, his throat a gaping wound.
The filth besmirched your honour, your grace. Said you took tail and ran from Lyria like a belted bitch.
The travellers were unmoved by this explanation. They demanded the Lyrian soldier be punished according to Edern's laws, by chopping off the hand that dealt the fatal blow. Meave walked up to the accused soldier who awaited her verdict with tears in his eyes. She put her hand on his shoulder.
This man defended my honor.
The Queen proclaimed loudly.
For this he deserves not punishment, but praise. And you remember, whoever defames my name shall soon regret it.
Meave's unit marched off to the sound of jeers and curses. But her soldiers held their heads high, proud of their queen.
You'd fucking crumple a trading with the skeleton by day, for all to see.
Ravens are always trailing armies. Ravens and beasts. Tucked a bushel of grain away in my shack, but I'm too fearful to return there.
Soon after entering Edern, Meave ordered a halt. She wished to sit with Black Rayla and plan their onward march, for Rayla knew every path in the realm, including ones not drawn on any map. They were hard at work when shouts rang out among the tents.
One final time I shall say it! As your senior officer, I order you to depart the training grounds, or...
Or what, pray tell? You'll have me drop and give you 50?
What is the meaning of this?
Your Grace, I had thought to use this interval to drill the recruits, teach them...
To walk.
To maneuver, Gascon. A world of difference. In perfect harmony must soldiers traverse the field of battle. Otherwise, they could break formation. The enemy would penetrate our lines, and our army could be slaughtered.
And therein lies the rub, dear Reynard. Army. This is no army, but a band of partisans. If we do not adapt to the rules of desperation, if we adhere instead to the Academy Codex, we shall lose. Laying traps, wiping tracks, that's what we should teach the lads. Not marching to the beat.
All my eye! A fighting force must have discipline. Otherwise, tactics and planning are impossible. A soldier must obey orders.
Douse your outrage, Reynard. Gascon makes a valid point. Change we must accept, embrace even. Our resources are limited. We cannot do everything at once. Prepare your proposed plans for training the recruits, and I shall decide which we shall follow. Clear? Then get to work.
Did our oats not suit the Emperor? However did our oats and other plantings harm him? Black-Clads brought them monsters here, I'm sure of it. Your Majesty, I beg ye, let me join your ranks. Nothing but hunger and death await me here.
Your Grace.
Meave heard Reynard call out from behind her.
A scout's returned. Claims to bear an urgent message.
The Queen halted her horse and waited for the soldier to reach her. He abandoned all formalities and jumped straight to the point.
Milady, a black-clad caravan, armed to the hilt, rides this way. To believe the rumours, they're hauling a load of war loot back south.
Reynard gave the soldier new orders, then turned to Meave.
Sounds like a prime opportunity to replenish our coffers.
Indeed. An opportunity we cannot ignore.
The Queen said.
Your unit will block their path. Gascon and his men will hide in the woods and strike their flanks, while I shut the trap, attacking from behind.
Their plan established, Meave gave the signal to move out. A brief moment later, the fight began. Their plan ended in success, the Nilfgaardians crushed. As soon as the dust had settled, Meave tore the canvas off the nearby wagons to see what precious loot they had so carefully guarded. She expected to find gold, jewels, or exquisite silks. Instead, she saw dirty, terrified figures bound in chains.
Slaves,
Reynard muttered.
Their precious cargo. Slaves. Behold the glorious future the Empire brings us.
Meave ordered the prisoners freed and discovered they were Edirnian peasants on their way to dig canals and dredge swamps as forced laborers.
You are free. You can return to your homes,
the Queen said. If she expected words of thanks and gratitude, she was in for a disappointment.
What homes, my lady?
Asked one of the peasants, holding back tears.
Took our land, they did. Nothing we have now. Not a rag to wear, not a crumb to eat. Leave us, we die. Soldiers don't do us in, monsters will. Assuming hunger and cold don't get us first.
The Queen was about to answer when she heard Gascon, standing behind her, whisper,
Before you make any rash promises, please, some maths. Dozens of hungry mouths to feed, and weak bodies to defend, twice as many tired legs to wait for, while war rages all around. You do realize you cannot save everyone.
I attacked this caravan hoping to fill my coffers,
the Queen said.
Instead, I have only secured a new drain upon them. But very well. In these ill times, we Northerners must help our own. Women and children in the wagons. The men shall march alongside to the rear. I warn you, if you cannot keep pace, we shall leave you by the roadside. Move out!
The Queen's gaze momentarily caught the eyes of an old woman her soldiers were helping onto a wagon. Tears of gratitude poured down her soot-stained face, across hard lines left by years of destructive toil. Meave was convinced she had done the right thing. As Meave neared Gatburg, her eyes were drawn at once to the black pennants flying over its palisades. Nilfgaard's pennants. Her scouts found the city's buildings intact, its streets unstained by blood. Black-clad soldiers could be seen guarding storehouses holding loot pillaged from nearby settlements. Curiously, these soldiers were very few in number.
The gates stand open. Clearly the Imperials expect no attack, giving us the element of surprise. We can take back the city and
make off with the gold.
Gascon finished. Meave hated Nilfgaard and needed gold to maintain her army. Two very good reasons to attack Gatburg. Her decision made, she ordered her men to prepare for battle. Now the invaders would have to try their hand at defending.
Larven! Essay to Navain!
The Battle of Gatburg ended in Meave's victory, much to its inhabitants' displeasure. While she examined the Nilfgaardian storehouses, the city's mayor, an elderly gentleman with a walrus moustache, requested a private audience.
Your Grace, I am old. Kill me, you'll merely save my gout the trouble, so I'll be frank. You've but few men. You'll not spare one to defend the city. When you ride off, the Imperials will retake Gatburg. peer into their looted storehouses and seek revenge. You will be far off, while we shall be oh so terribly near.
The old man creaked down onto his knees and gripped the hem of the Queen's coat with knobby fingers.
Your Majesty, I beg you, leave the gold, or the streets of Gatburg will flow with the blood of our women and children.
Meave contemplated what to make of the fellow. Should he be praised for his forethought and concern for his townsmen, or condemned for cowardice and insolence? Black Rayla, however, had no such doubts.
Traitors all. Small wonder the town's untouched. Must have opened the gates wide for the southern scum. Now they want us to let them fill their pockets with plundered gold.
Meave stood before one of the chests, filled to the brim with gold. She slammed its lid shut with a bang.
The gold stays. Every coin.
She said,
In exchange, I wish you to promise when the moment arrives, when Nilfgaard is on the retreat, you will take up arms and stick them in their black-clad backs.
The old man stared for a long while into Meave's cold eyes, then merely nodded his head in silence.
If we show them there's gold to be had, they could in turn show us mercy.
Gatburg opened its gates to the Black-Clads, surrendered without a fight. They take the young and strong as slaves, leave the elders to starve and wane. Elves and dwarves, dirty non-humans, took sides with Nilfgaard. Then of a sudden, hit us from the back.
Was here just a week past. That was a mill. An inn. Out more than ashes now.
And of the people, not a trace. Not even the bodies. Look to the high road. The earth furrowed by wheels, hooves. The Black-Clads went at Rosberg with all their strength. An ominous sign.
For Nilfgaard, I'd say. The fortress boasts 2 new towers, a deeper moat, gate of wrought iron. It cannot be taken. What happened here?
Sadly, it was Rayla who met with surprise. 100-yard gap gaped in the unbreachable walls of Rosberg. The fortress itself was aflame, spewing black smoke into the sky.
I don't... How? It can't be!
There was no time to consider her question, for Nilfgaardian scouts had spotted Meave's company. The Queen knew battle was inevitable, so she gave the signal to form a defensive line, then drew her blade.
Your Grace, Nilfgaardian fighters remain in the city.
Wait, you're serious?
Yeah.
Of course, as you wish, master.
Hey?
we're here?
Bloody whoresomes. They'll pay for this.
Scheiß! In! Trey!
Off to the front yet again.
We'll catch them all!
I refuse to believe it. The king could not have died here.
The chase is on!
Ah!
Quiet! The Commissar will hear.
Ever have a storm knock out one of your teeth?
Scheiß! In! Trey!
I've hit the white of an eye from half a league away.
And just when you thought things were about to get dull.
One bullet's all I need.
Watch for Demoven's banners! If he's here, we must find him!
The Libyans met one note of luck in this song of woe. Rosberg had fallen, yes, but the Nilfgaardians, not expecting reinforcements from the south, had stationed only a small detachment to hold it. Meave led her men to victory and retook the fortress. Or rather, what was left of it. What they did not demolish during their assault, the Nilfgaardians burnt once inside the city. Countless charred corpses of both defenders and peasants seeking shelter from the invaders lay among the blackened ruins. Some had tried to shield their children from the fire with their own bodies. To no avail.
Gods be damned!
The Queen cried, pounding her fist against the wall. Meave was about to give the order to move on when she caught a stifled whimper coming from a pile of rubble. Her soldiers ran to the rescue, their bare hands digging through the fiery bricks.
Here! He's alive!
The man they pulled from the ruins had suffered horrible burns. His face was a stew of seared flesh and pus-filled boils, and he reeked of burnt meat. Seeing Black Rayla, the poor soul staggered to his feet and lifted a shaking hand in salute.
Engineer Lieutenant Xavier Lemons, reporting for duty.
Medic! Send for a medic!
Lemons! What the devil's happened?
I know not. East Tower, I led the defense. Heating oil to tan Nilfgaardian hides. A catapult struck. The cauldron tipped, burst into flames. The rest, I cannot say.
The fortress fell.
Fell? Damned Scoia'tael.
What was that?
Our preparations were perfect. A month, 2 we could have lasted, but traitors were among us. Elves, dwarves, planted charges on the buttresses. An explosion shook the tower, a hole gaped in the wall. Our men threw themselves in, filling the breach.
Vermin, filthy, rotten vermin.
I know you suffer, soldier, but Queen Meave wishes to meet with your sovereign, Demoven. We must know what's become of him.
Gone, luckily. He oversaw the preparations, then returned to Aldersburg. 3 days past.
Then let us do the same. Reynard, prepare our departure.
Hold your grace. Did anyone survive? Anyone at all?
No. There were no other survivors.
How could they? An entire detachment? An entire city? The animals.
Soldier, my medics will tend to you as best they can. Then we can escort you home if...
This is my home, Your Grace. Rosberg, I beg you. Let me join your company. Let me exact revenge.
I respect your fighting spirit, good man. But in your state...
Your Grace, I can hold neither shield nor sword, but I can still fight in my own way. I'm an engineer. I build siege towers, ballistae, bridges, whatever you wish. I pray, grant me a chance.
Such pain, such ferocity resounded in Xavier's rasping, distorted voice that Meave could not refuse his plea. Once the medics had bandaged his wounds, Meave's men set out towards Aldersburg, following Demavend and the Nilfgaardians. At one point in their journey, Black Rayla rode up next to Meave. The warrior's lips were a thin line, bitten to blood.
Milady, the road to Aldersburg leads through Moulderwood, where Eldain's Scoia'tael prowl. Same filth who killed my men, and delivered Rosberg to the Black Butchers.
Rayla breathed deeply to steady her furious, shaking voice.
Please, milady, I ask you upon the holies, let us find them and destroy them.
Meave gave a slight nod. It seemed the road to Aldersburg would prove long and full of challenges.
A pity Willem is not with us. Were he to see what lies before our eyes, caught a whiff of the burnt bodies, perhaps he would see with whom he now consorts, whom he allowed in our home with nary a fight.
If it be your majesty's wish, I shall send a rider to the prince with her.
I wish nothing of the sort. I will not correspond with the enemy.
Yes?
Rayla, how are you holding up?
Not certain I understand what you mean.
All Edirne is aflame. Nilfgaard's banners fly over its cities. Don't tell me you're not troubled.
Of course I'm troubled. I stationed at Rosberg for 5 years. Knew all on the crew there by name. But that's war. That's its nature. No sense bemoaning it.
I see. Just know if ever you wish to talk.
I won't. But I do appreciate your concern, ma'am.
This Eldain, could you tell me about him?
He should hang.
I'd hope to hear advice that will be useful to us in battle.
First of all, you can't rightly trust the bastard. He doesn't respect our laws, doesn't share our morals. The king once dispatched an envoy to Eldain, despite my advice to the contrary. Found the envoy the next day, eyes gouged out, shaft of his white flag jammed down his throat.
So, diplomacy's clearly not the wisest course. But what of battle? What tactics does he employ?
Like all elves, he's a worm. Avoids open confrontation, sets ambushes, attacks from the shadows, from midst the trees. It would be best to burn this whole forest to the ground, deprive him and his folk of cover, any place to hide.
Sounds rather drastic. Like tossing the babe out with the bath.
Believe me, they'd not hesitate to do the same to us. Not for a moment.
I must go. We'll speak later.
Your Majesty, I've been meaning to thank you for allowing me to join your ranks.
Certainly, Xavier. I welcome all foes of Nilfgaard to march beneath my banner. But what did the field surgeon say? Have you not resumed work too soon?
I've strength enough to wield a hammer, though my scars still burn, and fiercely so. My lady, I've seen folk turn and frown at the very sight of me. If my appearance disgusts you, I can...
Nonsense. The Nilfgaardians, not you, should be ashamed. You've no reason to hide, no reason to cower.
Thank you, my lady. It means a great deal to hear that.
You've long served in King Demoven's army, haven't you?
Yes, Your Grace.
Why enlist at all? What prompted you to do so?
The king needed engineers. I answered the call.
Not terribly talkative, are you?
I can build any bridge, any ballista, but to talk, well, it hurts to talk.
I see. Well, do not worry. I prefer deeds to words, in myself and others. Other matters await my attention. We shall speak later.
As you wish, my lady.
Meave's ears caught the sound of a ruckus coming from the camp.
Feet! Ingrid! A pox upon you all!
It was her quartermaster hurling oaths at the peasants she had freed from the Nilfgaardian slave convoy. A few had stolen supplies under the cover of darkness and escaped into the woods. Terror and dread gripped the other freed prisoners. Meave mulled over what to do with them, and Reynard, as always, offered some advice.
'Tis high time they went off on their own, Your Grace. They are too great a hindrance. They slow our march, divert our soldiers from more important tasks. And now this.
Gascon was listening to their conversation. Meave shot him a questioning look.
I opposed taking them in. So, for consistency, I now oppose forcing them to leave. We made their miserable lives our responsibility, did we not? Well then, that is a burden we cannot simply shrug off.
Let us not mince words. We cast off these peasants now, they shall die.
Meave said in the end.
Let them stay. But I want them watched. They cause any more trouble, military justice they shall face. Understood?
The freed prisoners sighed with relief. The infantrymen assigned to watch over them, however, grumbled their disapproval of the Queen's decision.
It is an army, not a shelter,
they said. Meave's ears surely caught the complaint. But the Queen had never let the opinions of others guide her in such matters, trusting only her own judgment.
Not liking the looks of this,
Gascon said, furrowing his brow. Meave followed his gaze. Before them, beside the road, stood a hut with a scorched thatch roof.
Why?
Huts abandoned, yet dried fruit and mushrooms hang from the eaves. Famine raging all around and no one's been tempted. I'd send a scout if I were you.
The Queen did as Gascon suggested, and sent 3 infantrymen to reconnoiter. They entered the hut and found only silence, that was soon broken by a blood-curdling growl. The soldiers ran out at full speed, tripping over their own legs. Meave drew her sword, convinced a horde of neckers or ghouls would soon attack. But her fears proved unfounded. Instead of monsters, out of the hut came a shaggy dog, a torn scrap of fabric clutched in its teeth.
Milady,
one of the soldiers began, his face red with embarrassment and his hands covering a hole in his breeches.
Was dark as a well inside, and that hound, it jumped out at us all of a sudden, biting it and snapping.
Bad boy,
Gascon said with a smile, then pulled a hunk of dried sausage from his bag. Bought by this generous offering, the dog calmed down at once. Further examination showed the dog was the hut's only resident. Like many others in Aedirn, its owners had disappeared without a trace. Their loyal mutt still guarded the premises, waiting for his master's return.
Let's take him with us,
Gascon said.
Otherwise, he'll die here, of his own hunger or someone else's.
A watchful sentry like this could prove useful in our camp,
said the Queen.
Fine, he can join. But he shall need a name.
How about Reynard?
Proposed Gascon, a cheeky grin smeared across his face.
That way, he'll come when you call, sit on command, and always be a heel. Always heel, that is.
Watch your words,
said Reynard, hand tightly gripping the hilt of his sword.
Or you'll learn I'm not at all as tame as you believe.
Enough, both of you. That's an order. As for you...
The Queen took a good look at the dog, who still had a scrap of fabric in his teeth.
Since it seems you have a taste for the cloth of the nether regions, I dub you... Knickers. Will that do?
The dog wagged its tail vigorously, as if thoroughly pleased with its new name. Meave's company marched off, a furry new recruit richer. Meave and her companions neared the Moulderwood, a dense, ancient forest of trees whose tangled branches had witnessed the conjunction of the spheres. It was not until King Vidamont's day that a road was finally carved through the primeval thicket, significantly shortening the journey from Rossburg to Aldersburg.
Even when peace reigns, danger rules this road.
Rayla said.
Now no one dares travel it.
At the edge of the wood by the road stood an enormous willow. Its branches swept down to cover its trunk, looking for all the world like long tresses shrouding a woman's face. Meave had an ill premonition. She did not like the sickly sweet aroma wafting from this tree, nor the metallic buzzing of insect wings. She sent a scout to investigate. He drew aside the drooping branches and stumbled back. There were men bound to the tree, covered in sap oozing from gashes in its trunk. Its heavy scent had attracted swarms of insects, flies, wasps, bees and beetles. They seethed over the bound men, crawling in and out of their ears and nostrils.
Eldain welcomes us to his wood,
Rayla whispered. Meave stepped towards the tree and saw the men stuck to it were all still alive. Those the elves had caught recently writhed and howled for rescue. Those hanging longer merely followed the Queen with half-crazed, bloodshot eyes.
Well, are you to stand there all day?
Meave screamed to her dumbstruck Lyrians.
Free them, at once!
Her soldiers needed no more prompting and set about sawing at the ropes with their blades. As soon as they had freed the first captive, before even a word of thanks could be uttered, a flaming streak soared through the air and stuck in the tree. The oozing resin burst into flames, engulfing the prisoners as well as the soldiers who had come to their aid. Elder speech battle cries rang out from the woods as elven warriors launched their attack.
Nilfgaardian'he! It's a trap!
Cried Reynard.
Defend the Queen!
The battle done, Meave surveyed the carnage, her breath still ragged. The thick stench of blood, sap, and ash she sucked in made her stomach churn and head swoon.
The Scoia'tael. I'd heard of their cruelty, but...
The Queen said, sheathing her sword.
But never have I countenanced a thing like this.
Black Rayla, who had just extracted her blade from between an elven gorilla's ribs, smiled darkly.
Worst is yet to come, my lady.
The Queen regrouped her forces and marched into the Moulderwood. The Lyrians sang none of their usual marching songs. Instead, they walked in silence, eyes darting constantly to their flanks.
Hear that? Nightingales. Unmindful of war, they sing on.
Those are no birds, my lady. Just Scoia'tael scouts use animal cries to communicate. Tell the men to hold to the road, my lady. Anyone wanders in the trees, they don't come out.
Meave's path took her to the village of Iconfurt. Unlike most settlements in the area, not a single human dwelled here. Instead, Only elves and dwarves sat on its porches and stared at the passing Libyans with clear aversion. Not a single greeting was extended to their allies in arms. Not a single peddler tried to hawk their wares. The only sound was that of snapping shutters and slamming doors.
Something's amiss,
Rayla said, furrowing her brow.
Order a halt, my lady, and give me a moment to look around.
You've a quarter of an hour.
Meave said as she dismounted.
And not a moment more.
The Queen sat in the shade of a large pear tree. She shut her eyes and listened to the chirping of crickets in the grass, savoring a rare moment of relaxation. But the calm did not last. Within moments, one of her scouts returned, a certain Sergeant Niedermere. Tears streamed down his weathered, scar-pocked face.
Lady, come with us, please. You'll need to see this for yourself.
The sergeant led her to the still smouldering remains of a mill. Her soldiers were picking things out from the ashes. When she got closer, she realized in horror they were human skulls, some no larger than apples.
Tell the villagers to gather by the well.
The Queen said in a strained voice.
Or be executed.
The elves and dwarves attempted no denials. They admitted Eldain and his Scoia'tael had helped them round up all the humans in their village, march them into the mill, then set it aflame.
They stole our lands, defiled our names, beat us, murdered us in bloodthirsty pogroms,
shouted one of the dwarves.
They had it coming to them. Got their comeuppance, I'd say.
Meave was no stranger to the cruelty of war, but the enormous evil she found in Iconfurt overwhelmed her. She felt a terrible weight on her chest, found it hard to draw breath, and her head spun. She felt she could hear the cries of humans being burned alive.
Ma'am,
whispered Reynard.
You must pronounce something.
Or simply turn the matter over to me, Your Grace.
Rayla interrupted.
I know what to do.
You know what you deserve,
Meave said.
But my soldiers are neither murderers nor executioners, and you are not my subjects. So I shall have you escorted to Rosberg. Let the authorities there mete out justice. With a noose, I hope.
The Queen chose a dozen soldiers and tasked them with seeing the non-humans of Iconfurt tried by an Edirnian judge. In doing so, she weakened her forces, but saved herself and her Libyans from having to carry out a bloody sentence by their own hand.
What was that?
Meave asked Reynard, who rode beside her.
A scream. A man's, I think.
Need to investigate. Gather a few men and we ride. Quickly!
The screaming came from a small settlement. When Meave rode up to its farmhouses, her horse reared and neighed in terror. Necrophages swarmed all around. The monsters surrounded a few Nilfgaardians who were trying, with no success, to chase them off with torches. Reynard swept his gaze over the carnage and said,
They cannot stave them off, and their armor is too heavy for them to flee.
Meave was uncertain at first how to act. But when she saw ghouls snatch one of the Nilfgaardians and rip him to shreds, she drew her sword.
No one deserves such a death. Not even a Nilfgaardian. Follow me!
The Libyans and the Nilfgaardians fought the monsters side by side, a united force. But when the last necrophage fell, the soldiers immediately returned to their respective divisions. Meave's soldiers looked at the invaders askance, uncertain what would happen next. Suddenly, one of the Nilfgaardians broke ranks and fell to his knees.
Your Grace, I know you have no reason to trust us, but we are not enemies. We hail from Geisel, a land Nilfgaard conquered and made its province. We did not ask to fight in this war by force. We were conscripted.
The soldier hefted his sword by the blade and handed it, hilt first, to the Queen.
We yearned for a way to desert, and we have found it. Your Grace, allow us to join your army. We long for the Empire's defeat every bit as much as you do.
Meave helped the kneeling soldier to his feet.
The enemy of Nilfgaard is my friend, no matter who he is or whence he hail.
The Libyans were clearly displeased with their queen's decision. The black-clad deserters from Geso would need to earn their trust.
Have we not passed this way before?
Scouts say no, Your Grace. They mark the trees.
Elves could have erased the marks, or left new ones where we've yet to tread. Best to follow the sun. Only way not to lose your bearings.
Meave was riding at the head of the caravan when Black Rayla rode up and leaned towards her. She spoke in a whisper, a hand shielding her mouth.
Your Grace, I've something important to tell you. Yet you can't show anything's amiss. Look straight ahead. Make no sudden moves.
Meave nodded slightly and waited for her to continue.
Scoia'tael scouts in the woods, watching us. Eldain's near here somewhere, preparing his attack.
So what do you propose?
Asked the Queen, her gaze fixed on the road ahead.
Let him catch us out in the open. We're sitting ducks. But there are ruins nearby, an elven cemetery. We can find cover behind its walls.
Meave was accustomed to discussing important decisions with all her advisors, but she knew there was no time for consultation now. She had to trust Black Rayla's advice, and so without further delay issued the appropriate orders. Meave's retinue reached the cemetery before dusk. Her soldiers knocked down the marble statuary and piled them into barricades, while scouts took up positions outside the walls to watch for the foe's approach. When the sun set, the woods exhaled the heat of the day, and a thick fog soon arose. Out of the mist stepped Reynard's scouts, bound and pushed forward by elves. One of the Scoia'tael, a sturdy elf with long hair, stood by the cemetery wall and cried,
I am Eldain. I would speak to Meave.
I am she. Speak.
Cadmil en Kedvagenvid, Rena. This place is of great import to us, the Enshe. I would tell you of its monuments, of the weeping Ensevern, carved by 3 generations of sculptors, or of the alabaster relief of King Kellad, so beautiful even the birds would gather to admire it. But I see your men have found our memorials, and, in the way of Dwan, destroyed them without a second thought. I cannot say this comes as a surprise. You've already shown the gods molded you from the basest of matter.
Get to the point, Eldain.
So I shall. As you certainly know, the necropolis is surrounded. Soon there shall be a battle, but it is unseemly to fight in a cemetery. So I ask you to come out into the open.
And surrender our tactical advantage.
I suspected a matter so impractical as respecting the dead would mean nothing to you, Dwan. So I submit one more argument. The lives of the soldiers you sent to spy. If you leave the cemetery, I shall set them free. They will fight at your side. If not, I shall kill them, here and now.
Milady, don't listen to him. He can't be trusted.
Rayla, those are good men. Fabian, Gerrit, Matthias, they've served me for a decade. They'd crawl through 7 hells for their queen. They do not deserve such a death.
I accept your conditions.
Your Grace, I beg you.
Soldiers! We march into the field!
Eldain clasped his hands in thanks. Then, in a swift, almost careless movement, slit the throat of the scout standing nearest him.
You should have listened to Rayla, Your Grace. We elves truly cannot be trusted. Spala!
I warned you. Now we've lost the advantage.
I'm sorry, Your Grace. I take full responsibility.
I smell a leak.
Got business for me?
Thing about slings, they hide well.
Nay, dwan becamest.
Hey?
Onward, Fryhead! Now we will see who is weak. Slaughter them to a man!
Ever have a storm knock out one of your teeth?
Death to humans!
Look what Werecat dragged in.
I've hit the white of an eye from half a league away.
I shall not fail!
Give me a target.
Blätter! Bina!
After a long, bloody battle, Eldane's unit was destroyed, and Eldane himself sat at Meave's feet, defeated and dying.
To die in a cemetery. Something amusing in it, wouldn't you say?
I am surprised you are in the mood for humor.
All my tears I shed years ago. My family, killed in a massacre aimed at eradicating our race. Senseless. Utterly senseless. Reyna, we have lost. Me, my Scoia'tael, the Y'nshe. We shall vanish from this earth. Your grandchildren will know us in fairy tales only. I know I deceived you, but lay my bones to rest in a grave. Let me part this world with dignity. Ager Dregarred.
Oh, please! How dare he? Look, he laughs, Your Grace! This dog should rot in an open field. Need I mention the willow? The men he strung from it? The men he burned alive?
Mercy you don't deserve, Eldain. I shall leave you where you lie. Where rats will gnaw at your bones.
In your boots, I would do the same.
Vasse derad. Ep again.
Meave gave the order to march that very night, not waiting for the day to break. She wished to leave behind as soon as possible the moulderwood and the rotting elven remains littering Cutthroat cemetery. Black Rayla rode at the head of the caravan to the Queen's right, a satisfied smile playing on her lips.
Oh, at last. I'd begun to think this wood had no end.
And I thought bandits knew their way round a wood.
We do. Around those not brimming with elves armed to teeth.
The burning fields and orchards spewed thick black smoke, turning day into darkest night. Riding in the middle of her caravan, Meave could see neither its head nor its rear. Reynard ordered the men to keep formation and march in silence.
Eyes open, fore and aft. The foe might well use these conditions to spring a trap.
When a scout's shrill horn cut through the silence, Meave immediately galloped to the front of the column. She found herself in a pile of red-hot coals that had once been peasants' huts.
What the devil happened here?
Bodies lay amid the ashes, barefoot men in nightshirts as if caught in their sleep. Meave deemed them yet more victims of the black-clad invaders. But Gascon had another interpretation.
Look at the arrows. Imperial issue? Not hardly. Nor are they the type the Scoia'tael favour. And the tracks in the mud, the attackers fought not in formation, but man to man. Bandits. It must have been.
Reynard, standing next to him, nodded in agreement.
Gascon can be relied on here. After all, he knows of what he speaks.
An uncomfortable silence fell over the group, ending only when Meave ordered the scouts to determine the direction of the bandits' tracks. They returned to report the killers were hiding somewhere to the north.
I'm going no further, and I'd advise you to do the same. Bandits took the fort to the north.
Was nearly home. Nearly with my dear wife. Another dead end. How the demons do I get out of here? How do I quit this place for good? Cursed land. Nothing but corpses and ash. Corpses and ash far as the eye can see.
The scouts reported the bandits who attacked the village that night now occupied a fort the Adernians had hastily abandoned during their retreat.
They'll have crossbows, arbalists, ballistae. The bandits are armed to the teeth.
What's more, according to the local folk, they had a witch among them. In light of these reports, Meave's advisors debated whether it was worth risking a fight with the brigands.
Let's call it as it is.
Gascoigne said.
The game's not worth the candle.
Game?
Rayla said, struggling to swallow her anger.
They slaughtered an entire village. We cannot let them get away.
The stage seemed set for a long debate, when Meave pounded her fist on the table.
I am a queen, for God's sakes. I shall not cower before common rogues, even if the entire conclave of mages stands with them. Reynard, have the men prepare their arms.
Reynard saluted and left the tent. If one had seen him then, he would have sworn the grizzled soldier smiled to himself, beaming with pride in his ruler.
Your Grace, I saw flashes of light inside the fort.
Surrender while you can!
Watch your heads!
Today's gonna be a good day.
Yeah, yeah!
Did you hear that? A kind of incantation.
Something's not right. They should be dead with those wounds.
Juiciest leaks in town, get him here.
We must find a gap in the fortifications.
You can try to win them all, but you won't.
Thing about slings, they hide well.
Salty winds are blowing.
Got any victuals? Hungry like a wolf, I am.
Give me a target.
Can't take it anymore. You can try to win them all, but you won't.
Wait, you're serious?
Got any victuals? Hungry like a wolf, I am.
Hey?
Take it anymore.
take some more patching.
The fort is ours, Your Grace.
They battled long and hard to take the fort. Meave could have sworn she saw bandits stalking its ramparts. Bandits who moments before had taken a bolt to the head. By all rights, a mortal wound.
What the devil is going on here?
She swore as she took cover behind her shield. The secret was unraveled only after the battle's conclusion. Meave's soldiers dragged before her a grey-haired woman in colored robes. The aura radiating from her left no doubt. They had fought a sorceress. It was her healing spells that enabled the bandits to hold off their attack for so long.
What is your name, sorceress?
Ispel of Tretagor.
I take it you did not keep company with bandits willingly?
Not at all. They kidnapped me and forced me to aid them.
Forced? I do not understand. As a woman fluent in the Arcana of magic, you could have freed yourself with little effort.
True, I could have. But I would have had to kill, and I swore never to use my talents to harm another.
Not even in self-defense?
Not even then.
Then you live in truly unfortunate times. War rages all around. You cannot hide from it.
So be it. Then I must entrust myself to the care of the gods.
Or a passing queen.
You stand before Meave, by divine right ruler of Lyria and Rivia. We seek the lord of these lands, Demavend.
Oh, forgive me for not recognizing you, Your Grace. You do not look like a ruler. More like a mercenary.
True, I wear no crown. It was stolen from me along with my country. I strive to reclaim what was taken, and admit the help of a sorceress would prove useful.
Thank you, my lady. But you must know, an army is no place for me.
Should you wish it not, you needn't fight. We have many civilians among our ranks who
do their part in the slaughter. Indirect guilt is enough.
My soldiers do not slaughter. They fight.
Lofty words. But the result is the same. Piles of corpses.
Well, a bandit I am not. I shall not force you. Reynard, prepare the men to march on.
Of course, but if I may, perhaps Xavier might have a look at the war machines we captured. He may find some parts of use.
Meave followed Reynard's suggestion. Xavier went to work.
Yes, Your Grace.
Gods. What happened to him?
He was in Rosberg when the stronghold fell. Nearly burned alive.
How are you healing him?
The medics recommended regular poultices of dog's tallow, but whether they've any effect...
Of course they've no effect. For such wounds. How he must suffer.
In the day he reveals nothing. But at night one awakes to hear him sob with pain. You see? I need healers.
I shall go with you. But never shall I use magic to take a life. Do I make myself clear?
Yes, you have put it quite plain, and rather bluntly.
Forgive me, Your Grace. It has been long since I played the host. I forget the custom.
Your spells mean more to me than your manners. Welcome to our ranks, Isbel.
Isbel sat in one of their wagons and shut her tired eyes. Her long grey hair seemed to flutter ever so slightly, though there was neither wind nor breeze.
Go to Edirn, they said. You'll sell it up front.
The ruins still smoulder. Nilfgaard passed not long afore. They must be close.
No doubt they already knock at Aldersburg's gate. We must make haste.
Meave shook her head in disbelief as she surveyed the landscape before her. The Nilfgaardians had destroyed everything in their path. burned farms, trampled fields, leveled orchards.
The bastards.
She hissed.
They mean to cause a famine.
When the Libyans reached Braithwaite, a small village near Aldersburg, they saw gaunt men and women, more bone than flesh, gnawing on acorns and boot leather. The invaders had requisitioned every scrap of the village's food stores and hauled it off to their nearby camp. In strained voices, the villagers begged the Queen to help them retrieve their supplies.
Milady, frost'll come before we know it. Felt help us. Why not a soul will live to see the thaw?
Meave looked around at the blackened, scorched village, at the walking skeletons who dwelled in it. The suffocating smoke bellowing up from the fields sent tears streaming down her face.
I'll do what I can,
was all she said. She knew this was not the time for a rousing speech. She needed to act.
Milady, have mercy. We'll waste your days.
The Libyans reached the outer defenses of the camp where the Nilfgaardians had taken Braithwaite's food stores. Rayla delivered her report.
3 heavy infantry regiments, Nazari arbalists,
the warrior said.
And I heard neighing, so they've cavalry as well.
Meave said nothing, working it over in her head. The fate of the starving villagers weighed on her heart. But was it worth risking heavy losses to aid them?
The Nilfgaardians keep food in storage and watch it rot while peasants perish from hunger. Will we allow this?
The Queen said, addressing her soldiers. Cried the soldiers.
I didn't think so.
Meave said with a smile as she drew her weapon.
Libyans, attack!
Meave managed to rout the Nilfgaardian troops and regain the stolen supplies. However, the Queen's good humor faded soon after the battle. Her soldiers began loudly demanding she not return to the village, but keep the food for her troops.
We've nigh empty bellies too, milady. And whatever we give them, the Black-Clad bastards will just steal right back. Better to strengthen our own army than the enemy's.
Easy it would have been to take offense at the soldier's words, to accuse him of greed. But his words held much merit. Meave's army had no less need for the food than the peasants, and in war-ravaged Edirn there were few chances to replenish their supplies. After a moment's hesitation, the Queen announced her decision.
We shall divide the food. Half we return to the peasants, half we keep for ourselves.
At first, the peasants were glad to see the soldiers. But their joy quickly turned to anger when they found Meave had decided to return only half the recovered supplies.
And for the Queen to stoop so low! So low! Robbing good folk! Starving good folk! Ugh!
Meave refused to argue with the villagers. Yes, justice was on their side. But in times of war, justice counts for little.
A thief who takes half your coin is just as much a thief as one who takes it all.
Mom, it's good you're here. We ought to speak.
Yes? Concerning what?
I've spent time with your troops, dressing their wounds, treating them. They respect you greatly, would follow you into any fire, any flood.
Happy to hear it. They're good folk, one and all.
Yes, precisely. In fact, too good to die in a senseless war.
Not certain I understand.
The Imperial army's enormous. Just how enormous we know, both. Had you all the Norse kings at your side, victory would still be unsure. Yet you fight alone. Know well you cannot rely on them.
Agreed. Nilfgaard's far better equipped and greatly outnumbers us. Yet, though try, they cannot be everywhere at once. They've stretched their forces thin, too thin. An error I aim to exploit.
You may be right. I hope you are. The lives of those you lead depend on it. You're proud, persistent, and sure of yourself. Just as I was at your age. It may work in your favor. Only time can tell. Meanwhile, how might I help?
You're no village witch, no healer. That much is clear. But nor do you look like our northern sorceresses.
I use no glamour, true. I've come to feel a body must age, and honestly so, as nature intended, as is the order of things.
You sound much like a druid drivelling on about balance, harmony, the good that is rot.
Rather poor, their reputation, druids. Yet they're in the right in this regard, I believe. Defy nature's laws, and nothing good can come of it.
Is that also why you wear no shoes?
Ah, no. I simply like to feel the grass between my toes, the sand, the mud. You must try it sometime.
I shall think on it. Thank you, Isbel. Duty calls. I must go.
Of course. Should you need me, I'll be here.
Meave's mount reared and flattened its ears, spooked for no visible cause. Trusting in animal instinct, Meave jumped to the ground and felt tremors under her boots. At first they were faint, barely palpable, then grew stronger and stronger.
What's going on?
Meave cried.
Why does the earth tremble?
Before anyone could respond, a scout from the forward guard let out a terrified cry. A moment later, snapped trees crashed down around them, and out of the woods came a 30-foot-tall stone giant.
Gods,
whispered the queen.
What is that?
A golem.
Isbel whispered back.
Favorite servant of Nilfgaardian mages.
As if to confirm his words, soldiers marched out from behind the giant, clad in heavy black plate. Their leader, however, wore but a light tunic, and his hands glowed with a strange blue light.
Dithen Kwan and Lyrian!
He shouted, giving the order to attack.
Glor and Ard Feyin!
Watch your heads!
I live to serve. Adalt!
Mom, break the mage's spell, and the golem's power will wane to naught.
Hey? Ever have a stone knock out one of your teeth?
The mage! Kill the mage!
Wait, you're serious?
Your Grace, it worked!
Raising her shield against the whistling rain of arrows, Meave fought her way towards the Nilfgaardian mage leading the attack. At close quarters, magic Arcana would stand no chance against a well-swung blade. Meave roared, delivering a powerful blow. Her blade severed the mage's aorta, and drowning in his own blood, he fell to the ground. He choked out by way of last words. Then the blue aura coming from his hands flickered out, and the stone giant thundered to the ground in pieces. When the dust of the battle had settled, the Queen ordered her men to search the Nilfgaardian camp. In the mage's tent, they found a rare instrument used to communicate at a distance, a megascope. The crystals encrusted in its brass frame were still warm, meaning it had recently been used to conduct a conversation. The burning question was, with whom?
Isbel!
Yelled the Queen. The mage dutifully came closer.
This device. Could you activate it?
Yes, Your Grace. But are you sure?
I am. Get to work.
Isbel nodded, then began calibrating the magic device. Finally, something clicked. A light flickered on, and before Meave's eyes appeared the outline of a Nilfgaardian general.
Speak common, please. I know not your tongue.
Oh, forgive me. I thought I spoke to someone else. Good to see you in good health, Queen. Or ex-Queen, I suppose, would be the more apt title.
Instead of fretting so much over my title, give yours.
Of course. Where are my manners? Duke Ardal-Ebdahi, Grand Chancellor, Commander of Army Group East. I believe you've heard of me.
No. This is the first time I hear the name Ardal. Ardal what?
I see you've a poor mind for names. Perhaps you should ask your son. He knows me very well.
You Horton.
Oh, what was I thinking? You're not on good terms, are you? Such a sad story. But don't worry, it'll soon be over.
Is that a threat?
No. A simple prediction. Enough of this. Why use this megascope? What is it you want?
I wanted to see the man who's butchering Edirn. The man responsible for the deaths of thousands of women, elders and children.
Then your desire has been satisfied. It was I who gave the order to cleanse this land of unwanted elements. To prepare it for settlement. For...
Unwanted elements? Those are living folk you speak of.
If you were to look at this war in historical perspective, considering the wider geopolitical context, forget it. It's impossible for you to grasp. Farewell, Your Majesty. Or rather, till next time. For there will be a next time, I assure you.
A quiet fell over the tent. The Queen stepped outside, squinted her eyes against the glare of the burning fields, and swore to herself that when she did see Grand Chancellor Ardal-Ebdahi again, he would be a whole head shorter.
All destroyed. As if nobody lifted a finger against the Nilfgaardians.
King surely ordered all his armies to return to Aldersburg. Took cover behind its walls.
I do not wish to dismay, but after what we saw at Rossburg...
Enough doomsaying, Gascon.
Coming across a small brook, Meave ordered her soldiers to replenish their water supplies. When they returned, it was with empty water skins and troubled expressions.
Milady, the water tastes of blood. Not like black pudding, mind, but rancid, filthy.
Meave had no choice but to march on. She gulped dryly and wondered how to interpret this strange event. An omen, perhaps? A warning from the gods? She soon learned the truth. Following the brook upstream, the Libyans arrived at a small pool. Bobbing on its surface were dozens of corpses. A young woman caught Meave's gaze, her long hair spread delicately atop the water, wide-open eyes reflecting the sky, a fine nose peppered with freckles, and a gaping wound slashed across her throat.
We shall stop here,
the Queen said calmly,
and give these souls a proper burial. Reynard, send scouts. Tell them they are not to return until they ascertain what has happened here.
When the scouts returned a while later, they brought with them a barefooted peasant they'd found hiding in the woods. They claimed he hailed from Horton, a nearby village, the village whose inhabitants had been murdered.
Them black-clad wretches stormed the village, milady. The devil Frigga at the fore. Rounded us right up, took us down to the lake. Whole village, mind. They'd chop, and splosh, splosh. 'Twas I alone gave him the slip.
Meave listened to the man's tale, then placed him in the care of her medics and ordered the Libyans to break camp. She rode at the head of their column, Reynard at her side, her knuckles gripped white on the reins.
Do we know where this Frigga is stationed?
Our riders report he's pitched camp to the east.
Then let's pay him a call.
They killed all, like Rosberg. My lady, please, make them pay.
The Libyans had no trouble finding Friggaf's camp. It was the size of a sprawling town. Meave stopped her caravan and called for a council. The first to speak was Reynard.
Seems our scouts were both right and wrong, Your Grace. They did pinpoint General Frigaf, the Butcher of Horton. Unfortunately, they underestimated his detachment. It is much larger and better armed than our own.
That changes nothing,
Meave said, forestalling all protest.
If I leave him unpunished, without so much as an attempt, I shall never be able to face my reflection again. We must attack.
Reynard bowed and passed the order to the Libyans. Later that same day, Meave and Friggaf's forces stood face to face on the field of battle. The Libyans won the day, despite their foes' distinct advantage. Historians later ascribed Meave's victory to her light troops' superior maneuverability in the difficult terrain compared to the plate-clad Nilfgaardians. But if you ask me, that wasn't it at all. A storm of fury had been quietly gathering in the Libyans' hearts, a squall of rage stoked by the Nilfgaardians' unparalleled cruelty towards the conquered. And no one embodied this barbarism more perfectly than General Friggaf. Meave's men were ready to sacrifice anything to see him punished. They dragged the defeated general before Meave. The Queen wished to learn why he'd ordered the execution of an entire village. How the Nilfgaardians could possibly justify such a crime.
2 weeks prior, I'd sent a detachment to Horton to procure feed. Captain Gaynor commanded it. While he was verifying their grain stores, they barricaded him in the barn and put it to flame.
The Queen listened to the general's story, her face a mask, betraying nothing.
Murdered. One man was murdered.
Friggaf raised his eyes to Meave's. The Queen was surprised to see them wet with tears.
Yes, my lady. My son.
The general's simple words bore pain, grief, and a thirst for revenge that would never be slaked. The Queen had to decide what to do with Friggaf. No doubt the general had earned punishment, the harshest possible at that. Yet, such a weighty personage could fetch a hefty ransom, and Meave's army desperately needed the gold.
My father taught me to respect the generals of my enemies. That even in captivity, their arms should not be taken from them. Their guards should greet them in salute.
The Queen said.
But you, Frigga, you are no general. Merely a cutthroat dressed as one. You shall die like the good folk of Horton. Quickly. Summarily.
Frigga received the Queen's decision with Sang-Hwa. He neither struggled nor begged for mercy. He simply laid his head on the trunk. A short moment later, it rolled onto the ground to the Libyans' deafening applause.
A taxidermied unicorn. Strange. What are your orders, Your Grace? Shall we take it?
I've no notion what one could possibly do with such a thing. We ride on.
Meave's Libyans were traversing a wood when they heard the loud, drawn-out blast of a horn.
One of our scouts?
The Queen asked, clearly perplexed. She turned in her saddle to face Reynard, who shook his head.
Strange. Gascon, appoint a few of your strays. Ones who know how to blend in. Have them sniff out who blows that horn. And why.
The scouts returned a short while later with their report. Soldiers had pitched camp in a nearby meadow. They wore Adernian uniforms, cut by sashes bearing a golden sun. They addressed their leader as Fulberson.
Know the name?
Rayla said.
Fulberson went over to the enemy first day of the war, took his whole division with him. Your Grace, a chance like this won't come again. Let's teach the traitors a lesson.
We must send a strong signal, one all the North will hear, from the Yaruga to the Dragon Mountains.
Announced the Queen.
Whoever collaborates with the invader shall pay with his head. Prepare to attack.
Rayla nodded, clearly pleased. The Libyans surrounded the meadow marked by their scouts. Moments later, a flaming arrow pierced the sky, giving the signal to attack. The traitors, perhaps used to fighting unsuspecting foes, stood no chance against the determined Libyan attack. At its conclusion, Meave personally knocked Fulberson off his mount, then tore off his visor. The face she saw evoked more sympathy than hatred. Fulberson was an old, sickly man, his skin pale and blemished. With great difficulty, he pulled himself up on his knees, then extended a shaky hand in pleading.
Your Grace, have mercy. The Nilfgaardians forced me to treason. They threatened torture.
Meave felt her soldiers' eyes on her. They awaited her decision. How would she treat this traitor? Would she really execute him as a warning to others?
I hereby dissolve your division, Fulberson. And you, surrender your sword and be on your way.
The traitor threw himself at the Queen's feet.
You've shown mercy befitting a truly great ruler, Your Grace. 1,000 thanks. To the west of here lie my lands. Visit me. I shall throw a sumptuous feast in your honor and provide a generous donation to your fight against our common foe.
Meave ordered Fulberson to stand. Her Libyans reluctantly stepped out of the departing traitor's way. When he passed Black Rayla, she spat at his feet. Meave and her Libyans arrived at Fulberson's lands, home of the traitor she had let live. He greeted the Queen with full honors. In ceremonial garb, a platter of bread and salt held aloft.
Your Grace, 'tis an honor to welcome you to my humble abode. Please, come inside.
A fattened piglet already turns on the spit. Soon I shall fetch my best wines from the cellar.
Meave, having lived on nothing but salt pork and gruel for weeks, was tempted to accept the offer. Black Rayla, however, was strongly against it.
Ma'am, forgive my insolence, but to eat from a traitor's table is foolish. Don't do it.
Meave ignored Rayla's warning, and for her part, Rayla refused to partake of the feast. The Queen attended in the company of only her closest advisors. The table groaned under all the refined delicacies laid out upon it, and rivers of wine were served. Fulberson delivered a flattering toast in Meave's honor.
You could search all the world and not find such a ruler. One so brave, so merciful, and so naive.
With these last words, heavily armed Nilfgaardian soldiers poured out of the adjoining rooms. Meave leapt away from the table, barely dodging the bolts sent flying towards her. She drew her sword. Meave fought her way out of the trap, and Fulberson, a traitor twice over, finally died as he deserved, skewered on a sword in a puddle of blood.
Reynard.
Yes, Your Grace.
Should I appear ready to forgive again? To let treason go unpunished?
The Queen said, wiping her blade on a lace-fringed tablecloth.
Kindly remind me of Fulberson's feast.
Meave went on her way as soon as she could, taking with her a hefty load of the oath-breaking lord's belongings and some valuable experience. As Meave passed the city of Harmelin, one of the peasants she'd saved from Nilfgaardian captivity requested an audience.
Be taking leave of you here, milady. Folk from our parts lives in Harmelin. We'll manage. But, milady, we thank you for taking pity on us, time and again. We've nothing, milady, or near's enough. Black-clad bastards took all's worth taking. Except in this. Amulet. Been in my family for ages. Kept us from harm. May it do the same for you.
Meave wanted to say she did not believe in peasant superstitions, but when she took the ivory pendant in hand, she felt a curious warmth from it. The peasant bowed, then joined the others as they trod off towards Harmelin.
We're safe behind these walls. At least for now we are.
The Libyans stood within 5 miles of Aldersburg, when the road, which until now they had travelled alone, suddenly filled with all manner of folk. Peasants, merchants, and wounded fighters in tattered uniforms. They trod solemnly in the opposite direction, their worldly possessions on their backs.
Aldersburg's fallen, my lady,
sighed one of the refugees with a forlorn shrug.
Outer walls breached. King still defends the old town, but black-clad goats are winning. You'd best turn back before it's too late.
We've nowhere to turn to, good man,
the Queen said, then spurred on her horse.
Follow me!
The Queen galloped so fast the wind squeezed tears from her eyes, the Lyrian cavalry close at her heels. Hoofbeats thundered down the high road, and the crowd of refugees parted, making a path for the charging riders.
Faster! Faster!
Soon they set eye on Aldersburg. A red glow filled the horizon. The wind carried screams and the clanking of steel. The once proud city was quickly turning to dust in the Nilfgaardian sun. The Nilfgaardian force moved to block the Lyrians' way. Without slowing, Meave cut down the infantryman who tried to drag her from her saddle with a hook. Her head in a winged helmet fell to the ground, leaving a bloody track.
Lyrians! Attack!
Meave shouted.
Take no prisoners!
The Lyrians managed to scatter the Nilfgaardian battalion, one of many besieging Aldersburg. Their scouts brought before the Queen a prisoner freed from the invaders. Meave inquired about the situation in the city.
Turned a right slaughterhouse it has. The Imperials, they... King had the city cleared, my lady, but didn't budge himself. Holding out with his guard in Old Town, walls still standing there. Said he'd fight to the end. Come with me.
Meave weighed her options. The situation looked dire. Demavend, to whom she had come for help, needed help himself. Nilfgaard enjoyed an overwhelming advantage. The small Lyrian detachment stood no chance of breaking the siege. But to retreat, surrender, that was not something Meave did.
The Nilfgaardians do not expect a relief force. Rayla, you know Aldersburg. Can you lead us by side streets to the Old Town, that we may avoid the largest part of the Nilfgaardian army?
The warrior nodded, and without waiting for any further orders, strode out in front of the party. Reynard followed her with his gaze, clearly troubled.
And what then, Your Majesty? We burst into the lion's den and...
And we pray the lion chokes. Follow me!
Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelled up elderberries! Avot, idiot one!
Gods have mercy. And demons take it all!
Taking advantage of the confusion, Meave maneuvered her troops to the very walls of the Old Town. Spying Lyrian banners, the defenders suspected a trap. But when they noticed Black Rayla among them, they immediately lowered the drawbridge. The Old Town was a maze of brothels and shady taverns. In normal times, students and other pleasure seekers prowled its dark alleys. Now, tired soldiers slumped in every corner, though the Lyrians' arrival clearly buoyed their spirits. The Fraternal Realms warriors clasped each other's hands and swapped tales. Even Edirn's king, Demavend, made no secret of his pleasure at seeing these unexpected arrivals.
Meave! Of all the besieged cities in all the world, you walk into mine. Come to the rescue, have you?
To be quite frank, I've come to be rescued.
Oh, yes. I've heard much of the events in Lyria. Disgraceful. Such betrayal. However, as you might have noticed, things are none too rosy here either.
Yes, that is hard to miss.
I thought we'd trade blows with the Black-Clads. That it would be an even match. 2 weeks. That sufficed to annihilate the army I'd spent my whole lifetime building.
Your Majesty, I cannot say what fate will bring, if we shall reach this war's end alive. But I wish to say now that I admire you.
Oh?
You evacuated the city, yet refused to evacuate yourself. You fight to the bitter end, like a hero.
But of course. A king must lead by example, after all. Especially in war.
Reynard, that rumbling, you hear it? Studded boots on cobblestones. The Nilfgaardians. Prepare the men for battle.
Yes, Your Grace.
So, now that we're alone, what's really going on?
What? Did you not hear? I'm defending my capital, like a hero.
Demavend, please, don't feed me that drivel. We've known each other far too long. Why did you stay?
Meave. As meddling as you are beautiful. See that building? That one there?
The... brothel? The Crimson Bodice?
Precisely. So, promise not to laugh. I'm a patron. A loyal one, in fact. One of the girls there, Demeretta. She's marvelous. Makes me feel young again.
A young fool, you mean? Demavend, there's a war on, and...
Allow me to finish. Demeretta became, well, with child. Exactly 9 months ago. Understand now?
She's entered confinement. Having contractions.
Since yesterday. You see, I cannot leave her like this. Can't have her moved. I must stay put until she gives birth.
And then what? Pray tell. Invite all of Nilfgaard to the christening?
No, my dear. There is a hidden tunnel deep beneath the city, leading far beyond its walls. Once the midwives cut the cord, we flee.
Demavend, you risk the lives of thousands of men for a single child. For a bastard to boot.
Meave, I would kill thousands of men for my child. Born in wedlock or out, it changes nothing.
It changes everything. One way the babe inherits the throne, the other...
You argue succession while I speak of a father's love. But I shouldn't expect you to understand. Your heart, ice through and through, always has been. No wonder, villain.
Your Majesties, the Nilfgaardians are attacking.
Meave, we must hold out. A few hours, that's all.
I'll do what I can. Defend the king! We must stop them!
Aye.
Catch!
Inarin Yalden Crowfair.
Ever have a storm knock out one of your teeth?
Meave! They're getting close! Devils take all! Help me!
Barbarians.
Meave! We must hold on a bit longer!
Have it the white of an eye from half a league away.
Give me a time.
Trouver les gloires!
Bigger they are, easier they are to target.
Alba! No! Chase!
Ha ha ha! It worked! Now retreat to the tunnel!
With their forces combined, the rulers managed to hold the old town long enough for Demereta to bear the king's offspring, a healthy, hardy boy. When the midwife slapped the infant, his scream carried above the roar of battle. Soon afterwards, the defenders abandoned the walls and left the city through a secret tunnel. The Nilfgaardians, furious that not one but two northern sovereigns were among the escapees, razed Aldersburg to the ground.
Thank you. If not for you, the devils would have devoured us.
I should say it was nothing. But the truth is, I need your aid.
Aid? But you see, my army is no more. I must pull back, regroup.
Pull back? Where to? The golden sun flies over your entire realm.
To Redania, to take shelter at the court there.
And then? Will you sit and watch the fool juggle apples as Nilfgaard parcels all Edirn out to its settlers?
Meave, one must know when to fold and when to double down. Nilfgaard has stretched the front. Winter will soon be here. Let the costs claw away at them. A year, two, then we strike. And we shall prove the Empire is a colossus with feet of clay.
Fine. Do as you see fit.
And you?
I can't live like that.
So what shall you do instead?
Fight on. Until I win. Or the Black-Clad curs tear me apart.
Gods. Such pity I have for your husband. The poor man must have had a rough go of it.
He seemed content with his life while it lasted. Yet I'm serious, Demavend, in my request. You truly won't aid me. Provide nothing at all.
I will tell my men whoever so wishes can join your party and fight on. But please, curb your excitement. They are tired. Few will choose the path of greater resistance. But... Are you familiar with the saying, when at wit's end, a dwarf's your friend?
Yes, it and many others. Yet as much as I appreciate folk wisdom, I prefer facts to philosophy at the moment. Preferably facts relevant to my situation.
How about this? Mahakam is but a week's ride from here. And there you'll find thousands of dwarves armed to the teeth. Enough to turn the tides of this war, I venture.
Yes, they could. If not for another fact. That the dwarves have always been famously indifferent to strife between humans. They'll never come to my aid. Bah! I doubt they'll even let me into their land.
Unless you show them this. The leaden ring. A token of amity given to me by the Elder-in-Chief. That's not to say they'll welcome you with open arms. But they will hear you out. And that is something.
Dwarven infantry I'd make good use of. I shall do as you say. Or at least try.
Good. And to ease your journey somewhat, I'll give you as your guide the best man, or rather woman, for the task. Rayla!
Yes, Your Grace?
You've been to Mahakam with me many times. You know their paths. Take Queen Meave and her party there.
'Twould be an honor, Your Majesty.
I'll send messengers ahead that the dwarfs may expect your arrival. Until then, good luck, Meave. And may we one day waltz upon the grave of our foe, Emperor Emir.
May it be so. Just as long as I get to lead.
Ah, of course. Farewell, Queen.
Meave left Aldersburg in ill spirits. Rather than provide the help she had hoped for, Demavend had merely sent her on to Mahakam. Her way west was lit first by the glow of a burning city, then by the smouldering remains of charred villages by the roadside. It was clear the war against Nilfgaard had taken a bitter turn. Each stranger was now treated as an enemy, and the customarily hospitable Adernians slammed their doors at anyone's approach. The party's morale was somber as well, and did not even improve with the first sight of mountains looming in the distance. Wandering among the ashes, Meave entered the dwarves' domain.